All right, so what we're going to be talking about in this video is lesson 2.1, which has everything to do with writing decimals. This is on page 54. Make sure you have notes laid out, okay? Make sure that you title your notes as lesson 2.1, writing decimals, and make sure that you go to page 54 in your textbook. Now, we're instantly going to start off by saying that writing decimals and reading decimals are just as important. We need to know the place value of when a number happens to be behind the decimal. Now, this dot right here is what we refer to as the decimal. Okay? But each number that goes behind it has a place value. Now, if you notice, they kind of look similar to other place values for regular numbers, right? If you notice tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, they kind of look alike. They just all end with a TH at the end. Take a look at how I'm emphasizing that all of them end in a TH. All right? So whenever they're behind a decimal, it will always end in a TH, okay? Always, 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 no matter what. Now, regular numbers, we read them as regular numbers, and we're going to actually do example 1, and we're going to write it in word form, okay? So I'm going to look at each part, okay? I'm going to look at what happens before the decimal and what happens after the decimal, and make sure I write each number out. So for example, the first part before the decimal is the number 13. Well, you're just going to write in word form the number 13. By the way, we're on example 1 at the very top of page 55. This is exactly the same thing. You're going to see the answer there in the book, but we're going to go over it together. The number here is 13. Whenever I have a decimal, I need to represent somehow in word form that there's a decimal. And the way that I do it is by saying the word and. So right after the number 13, I need to say the word and. Now this part can get a bit tricky. So what do I do here? Well, I kind of read this as its own separate number, kind of like ignoring these two, the decimal and the number in the front. And if it looks, what does it look like to you? 045? That kind of looks like a 45. So 13 and 45. However, I'm almost done here. I need to say the place value that 45 is under. So how do I say that place value? Well, you go look at the very end, the last number, and that's the place value it's under. So the first number is under the 10th place. That 4, which is the second number, is under the 100th place. And the 5, since that is the last number, it landed here in the 1000th place. And again, you'll hear me say it with the TH. So my answer is 13 and 45 thousandths. Okay? And that's how you write it out. That's how you put it in word form. Now, expanded form is basically getting each part, okay, and multiplying it with its base value. What does that mean, Mrs. Elliott? Well, we're going to look at each number individually now. We're going to look at the 1, the 3, the 0, the 4, the 5, and we're going to say what place value it's in. So the 1 right here, that 1 is in what we call the tens place. So here's what you're going to do. In parentheses, you're going to write the number 1, and you're going to multiply it with what place? The tens place. So 1 times 10 in parentheses. And now you're going to add it with the next part. What number is represented here? The 3, and that's in the ones place. So 3 times 1. Let's keep going, okay? Now you don't need to say the word and, because this is not in word form. We're now in expanded form. So I'm just going to put another plus, and now write the next number. The next number is 0 times 10th place. Now, if you don't know what 10th place looks like, it's just a number after the decimal, so 0.1 is what it looks like. See, 0.1 is the 10th place. I keep going. I put a 4 here. and I multiply it with, well, the hundredths place. The hundredths place is 2 numbers. So we don't put 0.11. We're going to put point, there's nothing here in the tens place, so 0.01, because 4 is in the hundredths place. And lastly, I'm going to add up the 5 by 0.001, so 0.001. If you notice, I'm always multiplying with the number 1 and some 0 maybe. But that's how you write it in expanded form, okay? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to do an example on on that same page. We're going to go to a skill check. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We're going to do skill check number 1, and this is still on page 55, and we're going to do number 2, 3, and 4. So 2, 3, and 4. So number 2 says this. It says 7.0135, and there's an underlined part. Now you're going to see questions very similar to this. And the directions here, according to my book, right, and according to your notes, it says write the numerical, so write the numerical value of each underline digit. And the digit that's underlined here is a 3. So when they say numerical, that just means that they want you to keep that number, that number that's there. And the way that you would write it is basically, honestly, you just replace everything else with a 0. So 0.00. You keep that number that's underlined, 3, and replace the last one with a 0. And that's how you write it numerically. Okay? Now, there is technically another way of writing this, but for now, I'm going to just show you this part. Let's work on number 3, which is a very similar question, okay? Number 3 says 0.069878, and this number is underlined, okay? So what do? I need to write it numerically, meaning all of the other numbers are going to become or stay zeros. So 0.0000, that number 7 is going to stay as a 7 and 0. So that's how I write a numerical value for each underlined digit. So now number 4, here's what we're going to do. It says here I have this number 153.4092, and they want you to put it in word form, meaning they want you to actually write out what number this is, okay? So we're going to start off with the first part. I think the first part's always the easiest. You read the number as it is. It looks like a 153, so we write 153. By the way, everything that I'm putting in blue is the answer, okay? I see that I have a decimal though, so what word represents decimal? Well, just like how we did it here, right? And represents a decimal. So and. Now, how do I do this next part? This next part's pretty important. Well, remember how we just read this like a regular number? It was just 153. Well, we're going to read this as a regular number. Okay? So before you even put the place value, read this kind of like as it's on its own. To me, this looks like 4,092. So we're going to write 4,092. However, because this is behind the decimal, my last part needs to be where is the place value. and we look at the very last number. So this is about 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal. Let's go back here and see what place value is 4 numbers behind the decimal. So ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what that's called. That's called our 10,000th place. So at the very end, once you've written 4,092, we write 10,000ths. Okay? And that's just to say, where does the last number end at? Okay? And that's how you do number 4. So here's what we're going to do now. We are going to look at example 3. We're going to stay on this page, okay? And we're going to stay on page 55, okay? And we're going to look at example 3. All right? Now, example 3 says, which decimals are equivalent? And you're probably wondering, Mrs. Elliott, what does the word equivalent mean? Well, let me ask you, what word sounds like it's in the word equivalent? To me, it sounds like equal. Or in other words, which decimals equal or are the same? So I'm going to line up all the numbers, 23.107. I'm going to do the next one here right underneath it. 23.017. The next one is 23.1070, and the last one is 23.0107. So how can we tell if they're equivalent? Well, first off, I always recommend that you kind of line up each number, okay? And you make sure to see, right, that do any of them look alike? So here's what I mean. 2, 2, 2, 2. So far, all these numbers look alike. 3, 3, 3, 3. So far, all of these numbers look alike. 1, 0, 1, 0. Okay, so these two are starting to look more alike, and these two are starting to look more alike. Let's write those out separately. So that the two here are 23.107 and 23.1070. The other two are 23.017 and 23.0107. And we can still check to see which one are still alike. Now, if I keep going, after breaking each one of these up, we can get a better idea. So 110077 blank 0. Hey, blank and 0? That actually means that there's secretly a 0 here. So these are actually alike. Whenever there's no number at the end, you can automatically assume that there's a 0. And let's take a look here. 001170. Yeah, these are not really alike. So the two that are equivalent or equal are 23.107 and 23.1070. Those two are exactly alike. And just know for the future that, I'm going to go back to this one. Another way of writing this is you don't really need to have the 0 at the very end. So another way of writing this is 0.003. That's acceptable. You don't need the 0 at the end. If you want to write it, you're technically correct, but you don't need to. The next one, do I have a 0 at the end as well? Yep. I don't really need to write it, so another way that I can write this is 0.00007. Okay? So that's how you handle with how to tell if something is equivalent or not. All right? So what we're going to do is one more style question from lesson 2.1, and then on this same video, we're going to stick to lesson 2.2, okay? So lesson 2.1, we're going to go now to, skill check 3. And this is on page 56. And we're really going to answer question 2, okay? We're only going to do question 2, which says, the question is, dinner for a family, okay? Dinner for a family of 4, meaning that there's 4 people in the family, are at a restaurant. And they're going to give us certain prices. So they're going to give us option A, which says 71 cents. That's pretty cheap. B, which says $7.10. C says $71. And D says $710. And what they want you to do is, based off of this scenario, they want you to see which one would make the most sense with what they're asking here. So dinner for a family of 4, so 4 people in a family, how much would it cost? What would be the best guess of what it would cost? Now let's start off with the obvious one that I don't think it is. 71 cents? You can barely buy a burger at McDonald's for 71 cents, right? So that's one burger. If you gotta feed a family of 4, yeah, I don't think that's right. So A is definitely not my option. And I think D is a little too expensive. $700 for just eating 4 people? Yeah, I think that's a little too expensive in my opinion. So now you're between B and C, and this one can get a bit tricky. However, you kind of have to think about even as simple as going to a fast food restaurant like Burger King or Chick-fil-A or even Chipotle. In any of those restaurants, right? Something for $7 would be just for one person. Okay? So very rarely can $7 pay for 4 different people. Okay? Meaning that B is not my answer and C is my best answer that I can choose from. Now that doesn't mean that everybody spends about $70. It just means that this is the best guess compared to the rest of them. So that's what you're going to see on your homework. They're going to give you different scenarios and ask you which one makes the most sense. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to lesson 2.2. I'm going to move this page here. And you can title this lesson 2.2. which is called comparing and rounding. Good news is I think we know how to compare numbers and I think we know how to round numbers. So we're going to be pretty comfortable with this lesson. And we're actually going to start off right on page 59. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about example 1, that's right there at the top of page 59. And example 1 says this. It wants us to compare the number 7.423 and 7.4235. So they look almost the same. Now, when they want us to compare, whenever they say the word compare, they want us to use these special symbols. And these special symbols are greater than, or less than, or equal to. Okay? So we did this earlier this year, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at both of these numbers, and we're going to see which one's bigger and which one's smaller. It's a little bit hard to tell from side to side, so sometimes I recommend that you write it off up and down or above and below each other. So like this, watch as I do it. 7.423 and 7.4235. Okay? What I even recommend is once I have all these numbers, I want to make sure that I have the same amount of digits. For example, there's 4 digits here, but there's 5 digits here. So what can I put at the end of this one? Well, I can definitely put a 0, and it'll still mean the same thing. All right, so now we're going to compare which one's bigger and which one's smaller. So 7.423 or 7.4235. Let's take a look at the order now. 7 and 7, those are the same. 4 and 4, those are the same. 2 and 2, same. These are the same. And take a look, the one with the 0 at the end, or nothing, 0 is obviously smaller than 5. So the big mouth needs to go towards the 5, and it would look like this. And that's how we compare. So anytime in your notes you see the word compare, that's what it means. And what we're going to do now is we are going to try 2 of these on skill check 1, right there on that same page. If you want to try these out on your own before you watch this, you can feel free to pause the video. I'm going to be attempting questions 2 and question 4. Those are the ones I'm going to try. So if you want to pause it, see if you're right afterwards, that's a really good idea. I'm going to keep going though. 17.48, and we have the other one is 17.480. All right, so that's number 2. And like I said, the best way to do it is to kind of line them up on top of each other. So 17.48, then we got 17.480. I noticed that I have a blank right up here. What number can I put there? Well, just as we did over here, we can put a 0. And if you kind of look at it, 1177448800, these guys are exactly alike. So we don't need a greater than or a less than sign. We are going to put an equal to sign. Okay, so that's my answer for number 2 on skill check number 1. Now, number 4 looks like this, 0.801, and we have 0.81. Now again, you want to make sure that you line them up, do it off to the side if you have to. So I have this one and this one. If you notice that there's a blank slot, what can you put there? A 0. And now we can compare 0, 0, that's the same. 8, 8, that's the same. The one with the 8 in the front, the one with the 1 in the front, is definitely bigger than 0. So the bigger one has to go towards here, meaning the big mouth would look like this, and that is how we compare. All right, so that's how we compare the numbers. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do more of comparing, and I'm gonna show you the next part now. If you go to skill check 2, right at the bottom of page 59, let me write that at the top here. You're going to see how we can still use the same concepts. So the direction says list the given decimals in increasing order. Now, increasing, a few of you were confused with this when we were working in math lab. Increasing means from small to big, okay? Meaning we're gonna get bigger with our numbers, but we first start off with the small one, okay? And now I'm only going to do one example. I'm only going to do number 2 here. And number 2 has all of these numbers, and I'm already gonna kind of line them up on top of each other. Watch as I do it. We have 14.4165. The next one we have is 14.416. And you see how I'm lining up the decimal? That's going to come very important. 14.41625. And the last one is 14.41605. Okay? So again, take a look. I'm lining up all the decimals. I didn't mix match it anywhere, but I noticed that I have some blanks here. So if you want to fill in those blanks, I recommend you do so. These blanks, like there's nothing here, you can put a 0 there. This blank, you can put a 0 here, and here, you can put a 0 here. And that will help you kind of read each number out. And again, we're going in increasing order, so the goal is to find the smallest number first. Then at the end, have the biggest number. So let's find the smallest number first. 1, 1, 1, 1. All of those are the same. 4, 4, 4, 4. All those are the same. 4, 4, 4, 4. So far, they're all looking the same. All these 1s are the same. All these 6s are the same. But now on this row, I have a 0, a 5, a 2, another 0. Which ones are obviously smaller, the zeros or the 2 and the 5? That's right. The zeros are obviously smaller. So we're now between these two, and we got to find out which one's smaller from just these two, okay? So let's see. From these two, we're going to look at the next number, 0 and 5. 0 is definitely smaller than 5, meaning this one, which is originally, remember, 14.416, is the smallest. Once I've used it, cross it out, so you don't get confused, okay? Then this is the next smallest. I'm going to put a little comma here, okay, to separate each number. So the next one is 14.41605. Okay, that's done. Now I'm back between these two that I haven't touched, okay? So which one's smaller, the 2 or the 5? That's right, the 2 is smaller. That's the one I want to have first, okay, because we want the bigger one at the very end. So 14.41625. And at the very end, we have 14.4165. Now, I didn't put a 0 at the end here. If you want to put it, you're still technically correct. I'm just not doing it because I'm going to write the original number that it was. But this is in increasing order, or from least to greatest. It's from small, the smallest number, to the biggest number. And that's how you do more of comparing, okay? Now we have one final part before we go. We are going to do skill check number 4. And this time we're going to be doing some rounding. Now we have already done a lot of rounding, especially in the second week. On skill check number 4, which is on page 61, we're going to do just a few questions together, okay? We're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? But we're only going to do part A. So 1 looks like this. We have 18.743. Number 2 says 0.0263. Number 3 says 0.4521. And number 4 says 7.143. And here they want us to round with a specific place value. And they tell you the specific place value right next to it. And I'll show you what I mean. If you take a look here, the number 1 says 10th place, meaning we're going to be rounding by the 10th place. Number 2 says hundredths place, 3 says thousands, and 4 just says regular ones place, okay? So it's gonna look like this. Number 1 says the 10th place. So I need to know first off, where is my 10th place? And I'm gonna underline it. Well, if you have this chart, hopefully you wrote it down somewhere in your notes. If you notice, the 10th place is the number right after the decimal. So I'm going to underline the number right after the decimal. Let's see. The number right after the decimal is 7. And just like in the rule of rounding, I'm going to look next door. And as you remember, 5 or more, if the number next door is 5 or more, we're going to let it grow. And if it's 4 or less, we're going to let it rest. So let's see, let's look next door, and it's a 4. Hey, that's 4 or less. So we're gonna let this number rest, meaning it's gonna stay exactly the same. So everything in front of it is gonna stay exactly the same. So I'm gonna have 18.7, and then these two numbers are gonna become what? Zeros, so 0, 0. And that is your answer. Now, Mrs. Elliott, is there another way of writing this? Yes, there is. Another way that I can accept is, remember, do I really need the zeros in the back? Nope. You can actually just write this as 18.7. So 18.7. Either answer is correct. So don't feel like you have to get rid of the zeros at the end, okay? Let's do the next one. Number 2 says we're rounding by the hundredths. So again, I'm going to go back to my chart. I'm going to look at where the hundredth is. And if you see, it's 2 numbers behind the decimal. It's the second number behind the decimal, which the second number is a 2. I'm going to look next door. I'm going to follow my rule. 6 is 5 or more. So I'm going to let this number grow. If I let it grow, what is it going to become? That's right. It's going to become a 3. This is going to become a 3. Everything in the front stays the same. And everything in the back just becomes 0, 0. So 0.0300 is correct. Or you can always get rid of the zeros in the back and just put 0.03. All right, next up, we have this one. It tells us to round in the thousandths place. Okay, and by the way, if I'm going too fast, you can always feel free to pause the video, rewind, fast forward, pause some more, think about what I said. That's gonna help you out a bit. But let's take a look at number 3. We're gonna round in the thousandths place. Let's see where the thousandths is. It's 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal. So we need to find the third number behind the decimal. 1, 2, 3. It's this one. I take a look next door. Hey, that is 4 or less. So we're going to let this rest. Meaning we're going to keep the 2 as a 2. Everything in front stays the same. So 0.45. And what happens to what's behind it? Well, that becomes a 0. And this is your answer. Now, of course, just like with all these, if you have a 0 in the back, you can always get rid of it and just put 0.452. So please make sure, by the way, when you're getting rid of the zeros, it's only what's behind the numbers, okay? So if there's any zeros in the front, like it was for here and here, we leave those zeros. You don't want to get rid of them. It's only what's behind it. And the last one is the ones place. Now the ones place, we don't really see it here, right? There is no such thing as the 1th place. That doesn't exist. The ones place is right in front of the decimal, okay? Ones place is right here. I take a look next door, and now I follow the rule for rounding. It's 4 or less. 1 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let this number rest. And there's really nothing in front of it, so just leave that one alone. And everything else becomes a 0, 0, 0. Now, of course, there is another way of saying this. When you just have a bunch of zeros at the end and no numbers behind it, you can actually just say the number 7. Just like if I had 8.00, that's just the same thing as saying 8. Or if I had 9.000000, that's just the same thing as saying a 9. So any zeros, if it's just zeros in the back, all you need to do is just say the number in the front. Now, if you want to put the zeros in the back, that's still okay. It's not wrong, but that you're going to see it more likely shorten up like this in the future, okay? So if you have any final questions, let me know. Feel free to email me on this lesson. But that is lesson 2.1 and 2.2. 2.1 is about writing decimals, and lesson 2.2 is about comparing and rounding. One final thing for lesson 2.1, we're only going to be doing expanded form like this. You're going to read in some of your homeworks to do it in another way. I'm going to make sure that I send out an email saying parents, to all parents, that the expanded form just needs to be written this way. All right? All right, have a good one.